Hey, it's Joe Mann, and we're here talking about organizational charts, org charts. I think harder than they look to do, oftentimes not done in a very valuable way. I did a little research, as I often do, and when I mean a little, I mean just a little Googling before we shot this, and I looked at the common org chart, what you see, and they all look the same. They're almost all hierarchical, top to bottom. And I think this is one of these examples where, without embellishing, I can say they're really close to useless. I think the only thing that most org charts ever seem to accomplish is telling who, in the most general terms, reports to who. And sometimes you have like departments that are delineated. And it usually has a name, a job title, and then a line to the next person. Not useless, but boy, is that not useful. And boy, is that not useful for someone who owns a small business and certainly not a law firm. Because it's not really answering the questions of why you would ever do an org chart to begin with. And the reason a big business might do an org chart is to help an investor navigate the structure of the business, or perhaps to show an employee to report to whom. For a small law firm or even a small business, I think a better way to frame the conversation is beginning with the end in mind, beginning with your vision. And that should be the purpose of the org chart. It should give a little bit of information about the business. It should also align itself with the vision you have for the business. And it should show people who to report to who and other stuff like that. But it should also make sure that your vision and the way you structure your business are related, meaning the structure of the business is steering toward your vision. Everyone's rowing in the same direction, which is your vision. And small note on rowing, actually, it just popped in my head. I have to say it because I've been thinking about this. Because everyone says rowing in the same direction. I wonder what people think of in terms of the boat. Do they think of like a rowboat, or like Vikings in a Viking ship, or like a cruise liner? You probably have to, yeah.
Or Aquaman.
Yeah, something like that. Sorry, I said it, yeah. I've been thinking about that. Honestly, I've been ruminating on that a lot. Okay, but going back to what we're talking about. So we're talking about chain of command. We're talking about an org chart, and why we would actually build one. And I was saying that we would do it. We build an org chart to make sure that the vision and the organization of the business are structured and related to one another, that you're all rowing in the same direction, that it's a purpose-built concept. So what do I think an org chart should do relative to what you see them do, which is, one, I do think it should show your hierarchy of the business, who is reporting to who. That is important, and I actually think small businesses often do not do a good job of that, even when they're really small. When you have a team of 4 people, it actually can be very challenging to determine who reports to who. So even if you're like a tiny business, you should contemplate the basic components of telling people who's reporting to who and what. But what are the other things that I believe you could do with an org chart to get some value from it? Well, one, you could list your job titles, so who does what, and their duties. That's a common thing. So what are their core job duties, so that everyone in the business knows in general what everyone else is doing. And if you're big enough, it could have departments and structure like that. If you have a finance department, maybe not a finance department, but different legal verticals, you have, your estate planning vertical and how that's structured, maybe your personal injury vertical, how that's structured, criminal, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the important things about any role, any spot on that org chart is that the focus of it should be, yes, who they are, yes, what their job title is, but it should really be who's accountable for what. Who owns certain parts of the business. A simple example of who owns the sales process in your business, who owns the service component of the business, who owns the product fulfillment, the legal product fulfillment, et cetera, et cetera. If I was making one small change, that would be a great quick thing you could do. You could name their name, their job title, who they connect to on the tree or chart or whatever you want to call it, the matrix, and then what they're accountable for, if anything. The other quick modification I'd make is I would not just have your organizational chart be who you have today, especially because in many cases, your business isn't enormous. You don't have 50 people. You may not even have 5 people. But you can still, so if you're at 5 people, you're at 3 people, you're at 7 people, whatever. You can list your next 1 or 2 hires. Who is going to come into the business next? And you can put that in your organizational chart so that everyone else can see that's the next change. You can make sure that your next hire is relating to the existing structure of the business, and importantly, that they're relating to the vision of the business, where you're headed. So maybe the next 1 to 2 direct hires, like who your next plans. And then you could even go so far as to add the next 5 hires after that, which might be a little more aspirational. If you are hiring 5 people over the next year or 2 years, 3 years even, who are they, what would they do, and how would they connect into your business? So you might consider that. I mean, if nothing less, your organizational chart should account for what I'm going to call the 4 R's: roles, responsibilities, relationships, and reports, which is a lot of what we just talked about. But if you just did that, you would be a leg up from an existing organizational chart. And if you went through the activity of actually building an organizational chart and you're a small business, you still get a little bit of benefit out of it. The other thing, you specifically, the viewer, if you're the owner, and I hope you are, of your law firm, or at least a partner, is making sure that the business is structured whereby you're starting to elevate yourself towards the CEO position, toward the ownership position, and that position itself will reflect what you want it to be. By way of example, if you are looking to be really more of an owner and less of an active CEO, less of an active role in the business, certainly no legal work, you want to make sure that those roles and those responsibilities belong somewhere else other than the CEO role, or at least that there's a spot that exists above the business as an owner for you to do your thing without doing everything. So one activity, if you were to watch this video and I was to offer you a little value, hopefully you've contemplated making an organizational chart or modifying your existing one so that it's more useful than just being a tree with names. I would do this. I would list all the major, what I'll call hats in the business. There's probably a bunch of other terms for it, but we'll say, like, in your business, you have marketing, you have legal operations, you have support staff, and there are a number of other things, maybe finance you can put in there. I would, for each person who lives on your organizational chart, I would label where they interact. So if someone interacts in the marketing component of the business, put that label on them. If they also interact in the legal operations, put that label on them. Then I would list people as being part-time, full-time, virtual assistant, or expert. So I'll back up quickly and say that when you're putting your organizational chart together in your small business, you have some vendors and some experts who are so integral to your business but are not actual employees of the business that they could be listed on your organizational chart as an expert. So by way of example, if you currently don't handle your SEO or your website, and in the long run, I suggest and hope you do bring that in-house, but if you're not doing that now, the vendor who's handling that may be so important to the business that they should be listed on your organizational chart for the time being. Going back to where we were. So you've listed everyone full-time, part-time, virtual assistant, expert. You've listed all their, what we're calling hats. And then you're listing whether they're internal, external. An external person is someone who's not your actual employee. You can look at that and see, that will reveal a great deal of information because it'll show where you're putting your energy and money of the business into. So if you found yourself putting the marketing label on just one person in your business and they also happen to have PT part-time, that tells me you're not investing very heavily in your marketing, at least in terms of man hours and probably in money as well. Same could be said for sales or legal operations. I think in general, you'll find a lot of your organizational charts will have a really heavy amount of legal operations and maybe not so much as the other components of the business that are going to be important in the long run. So if I was to do one thing, I would go out and do that exercise, and I would learn a little bit about my business, and then I would get people within my business to list their what they do and how they do it, and then I'd sort of structure what we talked about create that organizational chart, and hopefully you'll find that is more valuable than what you'll see if you go into Google Images and put in organizational charts, which are a massive listing of Word documents and names that doesn't do much for you. So go out, do an organizational chart, be intentional about it, and if you'd like any help or assistance with it, you can become a member of Great Legal Marketing, and we'll make that easier for you.